Hello, everyone. This is Jesse, and you're listening to Set Lusting Bruce, the podcast where we celebrate the music, the memories, and the stories that Springsteen fans carry with them. Every episode, we sit down with fans from around the world to talk about the songs that shaped them, the shows that moved them, and the moments that keep us coming back to the East Street community. So settle in, turn up the volume, and let's talk a little Bruce, because every Springsteen fan has a story. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today is Jake. We is a musician. We met through, there is this podcast dating service that we're both part of. And it just sounds really weird, but it's been really nice because people say, hey, I'm looking to have people join me on the podcast. And other people say, I'm looking to join podcasts, and they match us, and it's always fun. And thank you for agreeing to be with me.
Again, thank you for having me. I love the episodes I've heard. It's so cool to be here.
Thank you. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
I'm a musician and music teacher and jack of all trades, master of none, based in Los Angeles, California. I've lived all over the country. I put out a record of my own back in November. I've done everything from busking to dueling pianos to wedding bands to improv comedy to podcast production along the way. And I'm a fan of many folk and rock artists, including Bruce Springsteen, and love talking music, love talking Bruce.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Where do you teach music at?
I teach at a private middle and high school here in LA called the Geffen Academy.
Okay.
I'm in this very cool spot where I teach at a private school, but I'm affiliated with UCLA, so I'm technically a public employee of the university. Get to take part in all the excitement that's happening on a major college campus here. But it's a very cool job where I'm teaching high schoolers how to use a recording studio.
Nice.
We have, yeah, no, I'm teaching a class of sophomores right now. They've been writing an EP of their own music all year, and they're finishing up and they're going to do a performance of their own music for their parents and friends and family this Thursday. And then our advanced class actually mixes and masters their music for them. And we teach them how to do all of that, which
Very
is
cool.
a blast. Yeah, it's the kind of program I wish I'd been in when I was their age, which is really cool. It's my 4th year teaching there, and I love it.
Are you familiar with Little Steven's TeachRock?
I'm familiar with Little Steven. I didn't know Little Steven's TeachRock. No.
You should check it out.
Have to.
Yeah, he was on Tonight Show the other day, and this is the example he gave. He said that he was explaining that if kids like even one class, they will tend not to drop out.
Yes.
And he said that, and so this is a foundation he starts. It's absolutely free for teachers. And he's like, this example, he says, who wants to hear about the Spanish-American War? No one.
Nobody. Yes.
Yeah. Do you guys know the Spanish-American War? No one. Do you know who Bad Bunny is? Oh, yeah. Where's Bad Bunny from? Puerto Rico. Do you know how we got Puerto Rico? Spanish-American War. And he said, if you can find something that interests them, that's the hook to get them to enjoy. So you might check it out. I've had teachers join me that talk about just the beauty of it, that it's really Little Steven because as you know better than I do, art funding is really tough for schools.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. I did not mean to get on that tangent, though. Apologize.
All good. I was just going to say I work in that space a lot, and my specialty, or that I like to think is my specialty, is teaching kids how to write. So, like, my 6th graders just did a recital, or not recital, but a showcase last week where they're showing off piano compositions they wrote without using music notation.
Oh.
Last week, which was really fun. I'm teaching them to use the GarageBand program so that they can go home and make music on their laptops whenever they want to. And so, yeah, really meeting people where they're at. I think I share a philosophy with that. And while I haven't worked with Little Steven, my master's thesis, I got to work for 3 months with Jail Guitar Doors, which is an organization that works with justice-involved young people out here and was founded by Wayne Kramer of the MC5.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I got to write and see some really amazing music with them. And actually, I got to go to a fundraiser concert. You can see the poster behind me, actually. The fundraiser that I went to was headlined by Tom Morello, who did his fully electrified version of Old Tom Joad while we were there. And it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That's cool. Very
Yeah.
nice. All right, Jake, we always like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what kind of music was your family listening to when you grew up?
I grew up in Berkeley, California, and then the suburbs in and around there. And my parents were all about the classic rock and folk of the 60s and 70s. I bonded with my dad and my mom over The Who and the Beatles in particular. And then my brother played me Green Day and Weezer when I was getting towards high school, and I became a huge alternative rock fan, and that quickly became the indie rock movement of the 2000s and that sort of thing. And I actually kept Bruce out of my life for most of that. I used to dismiss him as a country artist, mostly just to piss my parents off, though they were huge fans of his. So I didn't come around to him until a little bit later on in life. But I was definitely listening to music in and around that genre my entire life.
So you've just proved two of my often theories.
Yeah,
I've been doing this a while, Jake. One is that siblings are incredibly important. That
absolutely.
if you're the oldest, you end up influencing the younger. If you're the younger, you are influenced. Sometimes the opposite way. If your older brother is into something, you may go into totally different genre because you want to be different than your brother. The other thing I find, there are two kinds of people: that the ones that loved their parents' music, and as they grew up, they just expanded their musical taste to continue embracing their parents' music, but finding their own. The others can't really like my parents' music till you hit 30, and then you realize that Johnny Cash guy dad likes pretty good. Maybe dad had a little something about Bruce Springsteen, right? It's just
Absolutely. No, and I think I started to understand him a little bit more. I actually went to school in Philadelphia for my first years of college,
okay.
and they shut down Benjamin Franklin Parkway for Bruce to play a solo set in support of Obama in Nate that year.
Yeah.
So I got to go. It was like 25,000 people outside, and just him in a PA system, right? It was amazing, and he
Wow.
was amazing. He's
Yeah.
and the only time I've seen him live, but he was incredible. But I transferred from there to go to music school in Boston, and all my friends were still in Philadelphia, and so I take these long bus rides back and forth between Boston and Philadelphia, and much of that meant I was stuck on the turnpike in the industrial wastelands of New Jersey. And looking out the window out there, I'd be like, okay, I get what he's singing about a little bit. I get what the landscape of what he's talking about is, right? And
Interesting.
it started to click for me there. And then my first job out of college, my first full-time job out of college, was doing dueling pianos. And so I had to memorize hundreds of songs, and several of those ended up having to be Bruce Springsteen songs. And that's where I think I really started to gain an appreciation for him.
So another side thing, why my wife and I, a couple of trips ago to New Orleans, went to Pat O'Brien's with the dueling
Yeah,
pianos, and the pianists were amazing. One of them's doing Back That Thing Up on the piano.
right.
And so, of course, I wrote anything by Bruce Springsteen. I
Yeah.
don't care. And she did a great version of Born to Run. Yeah, so that's fun. Did you did you have an interest in learning how to play music right away? Is that an early bug you had?
My parents say that before I could walk, I would crawl over to the stereo speakers and just pull myself up and press my ear against it and start swaying back and forth.
Nice.
So they kind of knew I was headed down this road on some level pretty early on. I started taking piano lessons when I was 5, but I stopped wanting to play. I was only into guitar music, and I was kind of caught in this weird netherworld where all I wanted to do was write music that was as heavy and as cool as those alternative rock bands of the 90s, but I was a piano player. And
Yeah.
nobody had told me that Ben Folds existed yet. So I didn't know that there was or Counting Crows or something like that, right? There were bands out there that kind of operated in both spaces, but I didn't know that existed. And so I was this kid who was literally, I would break the strings on the piano sometimes playing so hard because I was trying to be that much of a rocker. Yeah.
Did you do you still play both? You mentioned you play guitar. Do you still play the piano?
I do. Oh, actually, you know what? I should stop and tell you. You mentioned Born to Run at the Dueling
Yeah.
Piano Show. So one of the things about doing dueling pianos is you do these songs a lot, right?
Yes.
I could go the rest of my life and be perfectly happy to never hear Don't Stop Believing again.
Yeah. Got
Like,
it.
no disrespect to Journey. They have plenty of great songs. And that song is fine and would be fine if I hadn't played it 2,000 times, right? Born to Run is one of those songs that you do play a lot. And one of the things that you do with those songs that are iconic and that you play a lot is, as I'm sure you know from these, is you work in bits, right? You make jokes, or sometimes those jokes are just for the other piano players, or to just see if there's one or two people in the audience who notice you changed the lyric,
Yes.
just to see. And I had to learn how to play Thunder Road and Born to Run because I was helping. I worked for a chain called Howl at the Moon, and we had a
Okay.
location in downtown Boston, and we were opening another one in Foxborough, right across from where the Patriots play. And I had to learn those songs to be part of that crew. And at the time, I lived around the corner from a Wendy's. And so every time to this day that I play Born to Run and I sing the second verse of Born to Run, I sing, Wendy's let me in. It's only 12 a.m. I want to eat your spicy chicken.
That
Every
is
single time.
genius. That is genius.
um,
That
and
is
it's one,
so genius.
and it's one of those things that there's always just one person who goes, "Wait, what?" And you
Yeah.
live for it, right? And nobody else in the there's 300 other people. They're drinking, they're schmoozing, right? They don't know this, but there's always one other person who's, "Wait, what?" And you live for it. And so,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that was
That
that was one of the moments I knew I was in with my bosses because I got them to crack up for that, and yeah, I was very proud of that.
was I want to get off this in a minute, but I'm fascinated. It was there what kind of song made you smile? Because like they write it on the bar nap, right? And they
Yeah.
throw in the dollar tip and or whatever it is going to be. Was there any specific kind of song where you go, oh, great. Not in a good thing. Oh, this is one I haven't seen in a while. Oh, this will be a little
Yeah.
fun to do.
Yeah. So Thunder Road is a really great example because that's a song that's not played, not requested that often.
Yeah.
And it's also musically incredibly challenging
Yes.
because it's essentially a rhapsody. It does not repeat musically, right? It keeps
Yeah.
coming back to the one chord, it keeps coming back to the F, but it's never the same thing twice. And so I love the challenge of that, right? I'm never going to get sick of Bohemian Rhapsody for the same reason.
Yeah.
Like that song's just so all over the place, and you get a chance to try and get the audience going. That's never boring,
Mhm.
right? The moment, like I did dueling pianos basically full time for a decade, and the time I realized that it was time to maybe consider doing something else for a living is when I managed to get an entire bar to do a sing along to Brown Eyed Girl, and I didn't take my eyes off the basketball game that was playing over the bar, and because I could do it in my sleep
Yeah.
by that point. And that's not to say I'm any sort of excellent musician. I think there are things when you do any sort of job, like there are certain things that come with having done that thing hundreds and hundreds of times, right? That yeah, you're not getting the thrill out of doing it anymore. It's not a
Right.
challenge. And so it's songs like that. It's off the beaten track Billy Joel, right? Like I'm going to play Piano Man.
Yeah.
I'm resigned to that fact.
Yeah.
You bring up Vienna, I'm going to be a very happy guy.
Yeah. That,
Right?
yeah, that
Like,
makes sense.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you dig a little bit deeper, or like I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and my partner and I just went on an hour-long run of trading and seeing how many 90s alternative rock songs we could do. And by the end of it, I'm playing like the Mighty Boss Tones. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're just seeing where this takes us. And that the joy of the dueling pianos thing is that you're flying by the seat of your pants. You don't know what you're going to get. You have an iPad up there now so you can look up songs you know
Yeah.
and see if you can pull it off. And the audience is thrilled to be there and gives you the grace to go ahead and try.
Yeah.
And And that's the fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot of fun. I can imagine that. When you've done your service piano bar, what was next in your career?
So yeah, I spent my 20s freelancing entirely.
Okay.
So it was I did the dueling piano bar thing full time. Then I stopped that. I ran a wedding band for a while. I was still doing independent dueling pianos. I was busking. I ended up playing piano for improv and sketch comedy shows. I was booking concerts. You name the gig, I probably did it at some point. And I was doing all of that in order to fund my own band, my own music at the time. And I put out 5 different records between 2013 and 2023 under the name Drunken Logic. But in 2020, if you were a full-time freelancing performing musician, all of your livelihood went away in an instant. And I was fortunate enough that I'd applied to go to a master's program at USC in December, gotten in but deferred. And because I just wasn't ready to go back to school, and frankly thought that going back to school was a failure on some level.
Sure.
But I also knew that freelancing wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. God forbid, right? But then June 2020 rolls around. I'm like, what the hell else am I going to do? So I end up going back to school, and that ended up being one of the great decisions I've ever made, actually, because I made a lot of amazing connections with professors and students and other musicians there. It is because I got that degree that I got the job that I have now, which is more stability than I've ever had in my life. And stability is something that is very hard to come by when you're a working musician. And I also got a lot of really cool opportunities out of that. I've gotten to go to some academic conferences. I'm going to present a few things at a conference in Montreal this summer. And I ended up working for a podcast that one of my professors runs and do several episodes through them. That's been a wonderful experience as well. And so it gave me a chance to reinvent myself. I put out some more Drunken Logic music in that time, but also kept writing stuff, and then decided to go the Jake Cassman route and put my own name on my music going forward. And that's the record I'm still pushing right now.
Was there a road to Damascus moment when you decided that you wanted to make it in your name?
It's a little interesting. I don't know if there was a single moment. It was a couple of months where I'd gotten the feedback where I went in, I made this record thinking it was going to be a Drunken Logic record. Went into the studio, like all of the cloud service storage files would have said Drunken Logic 6 or something, right?
Yeah.
But I got feedback from a couple of people who said, Drunken Logic was originally envisioned to be a band, but I was just the last person in that band to realize it was actually my solo project.
Okay.
I eventually realized it was a solo project, and I got some feedback from people telling me it's a little confusing that you're using a moniker when it's not a band, it's the solo project. And also, Jake Cassman's not a bad name. It's short, it's sweet, it's got some hard consonants in it, and go for it. And I had another friend named Ethan Buckner, who's a really great musician, who'd just done the same thing and said it was one of the most liberating things he'd ever done. And then I'd also just finalized some legal agreements with the guys in the old band, and we're still all on good terms. But I'd also reached out to them like, hey, do any of you want to mail in parts for this new record I'm working on? And all of them said either I'm unavailable or I'm uninterested. And that felt, I guess we're making the clean break, right? Because none of you guys are involved in this anymore. So that seemed, the stars just aligned over the course of making the record. And by the time we were done tracking, I knew it was a Jake Cassman record.
I want to go back to COVID, the lockdown for a minute. I was lucky enough to have a couple of singer-songwriters and musicians during the pandemic, and we talked about that, right? You record, you do solo shows, you work around, sometimes with a band, sometimes not. You go to pubs, you go to wherever you can, you play. You get lucky enough there, you build enough to make a little EP or a CD, and you go to the show, you hope you sell enough CDs to get you your tank of gas to get to your next show and everything. And it is then, what do you do? Like all of a sudden all that live entertainment And I can remember feeling, are we ever going to get live music again? And it was
Yeah.
just really sad. Yeah. So as a creative
Yeah.
person, what were you feeling?
Um, yeah, I was in, there was a lot of shock of just the weirdness of it all. I think I went 2 or 3 months without a hug. I
Yeah.
was living alone in a one room studio apartment, and I did get some writing done, as I think we all did. Hopefully, we all did.
Yeah.
I'd put out, as Drunken Logic, I'd made this very kind of highfalutin political concept record called The Loudness Wars. And I was gonna have, I had plans to turn it into a musical.
Okay.
And because Green Day was one of my favorite bands growing up, American Idiot was a record that meant a lot to me. Tommy and The Who, that band meant a lot to me as well. And we were going to do it at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. And we had our read through of the musical on March 14th, 2020, which I remember specifically because that's the night the NBA suspended games. Um,
Yes.
because Rudy Gobert was positive.
Yeah.
And so every plan I had just came to a screeching halt. I had a Kickstarter campaign that died in infancy. I managed to keep some work going because I was playing piano for the Second City Comedy Theater at the time, and we did a lot of Zoom work. So I actually got more work through them playing for corporation professional development stuff
Yeah.
than I ever had before. And then I would drive out to the Inland Empire in LA, 2 or 3 hours east of LA, where lockdown wasn't nearly as strict, and there's a bunch of casinos around Temecula, and would try and play shows out there, usually the dueling piano thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, my life just felt stuck, and I was just trying to keep things straight. But I also, once I knew I was going back to school, I had a course and a plan, and I'm fortunate enough that I've always been okay at school, and that gave me structure and goals and new things to think about. So I was able to resolve it that way, but I also just knew this felt like a moment to try not to play cover gigs for a living again if I could avoid it. So I was going to try and come out of this on the other side playing as much original music as I possibly could.
You mentioned that during this, before this and everything, you were doing a hodgepodge of things. Is that just the way it worked out, or is that part of your personality where you like doing a lot of different things interest you, so you like to do a lot of different things, or is just that's what I had to do to make everything work?
I think it's a combination. I think when you're freelancing, you don't have a choice. You have to say yes to things because you need to know that there's a gig in 3 months. You need to know that the income's coming from there. And on a certain extent, you can't plan ahead. You can't plan a vacation
Right.
or anything like that. But you can, yeah, take the booking because you know you don't have anything on the calendar yet. And so your instinct is to say yes. And
Gillette,
so,
oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but Penn Gillette says that the joke is he answers the phone saying yes.
yeah,
Yes. Whatever it is, yes, we'll do it.
yeah. Yeah, and I think too, everybody else in my immediate family is an attorney.
Okay.
And there's a linear path forward for them that makes more sense. And with music, it's a lot more triangulation. It's trying to see, does this gig get me closer to the next thing I want to be at, right? And
Yeah.
as you get older and your energy becomes a little bit more limited, but also hopefully you're a little bit further along in your career, you realize there are things you can't say no to, and you have to get better at saying no to those things. And I've had to learn to do that. And so in my life, I've, shrunk what I do down from 8 things to 4. And that I am working a full-time job as a teacher. And then I am also working a full-time job making my music and playing it and promoting it and doing all of that. And then when 2 professors that I meet at a conference in Finland want to make a study on how adolescents discover new music, you want to say yes to that too.
Yeah.
And right. And I'm not doing that. I'm not in academia. I'm not required to do research, but that kind of came out of an idea I had. And I might end up wanting to teach at a university someday in the future. So that's a good thing for me to make an investment in now, right? And if I'm going to go to that conference in Montreal, when somebody calls and says, hey, I'll give you a fair amount of money to go do a dueling piano weekend in Lake Tahoe in June, might as well say yes to that too, because that helps pay for the trip, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're constantly kind of making decisions along those lines.
I have a friend who's an artist, and he made, when he first started out, anything, everything, and he slowly developed where I want fewer projects and the ones I do are better paid, right? At first you start out with, yes, all of them. I don't care what it is. And then you slowly work your way that, okay, my time is worth a little bit more than that now, right? And I'm going to trust my career and my talent that something else will show up. Though I'm sure that's a hard transition.
It is, but that's 100% true, right? And so when I moved from dueling pianos to weddings, that was part of the calculus, was weddings paid twice as much and were half the work because you knew what you were going to play every night.
Right.
And the crowd wasn't nearly as drunk and rowdy either. So it was a nicer environment. Now, musically, it's not as fun because it's not as adventurous. And that was the sacrifice there, but it definitely made sense to switch when I did.
Yeah. So let's talk about the newest album. Tell me about it, share me, and maybe play us a little bit of it.
Awesome. So it's called Idling High, which is a triple entendre of sorts. But if you've ever been in LA traffic, I think you probably have an indication of where that title might come from.
Sure.
And I wanted to write something that's in that great LA folk rock tradition. Everything from the Tom Petty and Warren Zevon. You can go back to the Echo and the Canyon, Bird stuff, all the way up to bands like Dawes today. Counting Crows was down here for a while. There is a sound that comes out of here that I find really arresting and really wanted to emulate. And there is something about being in a city that is where the weather is so lovely and the people are so beautiful that makes you feel even more guilty for feeling lonely and depressed when you are here, because you're surrounded by so much to do. And if you're depressed when it's 70 degrees and sunny and you should be outside, you feel like you don't have a reason to be depressed. But when you move here, it's really hard to get your feet wet, even if you grew up in the Bay Area like I did, and my grandparents lived down here. So I'd spent a lot of time here as a kid, but getting settled was really hard. And my first 4 or 5 years here, I was really reinventing myself and facing a lot of my anxiety and some of the things some questions and the darker thoughts that I'd pushed under for a long time. And so this album, and that's yet another reason why it's a Jake Cassman record as well, because it was really digging into that. So I dug into that, and I think the song I'm going to play for you. So when I first moved here, I lived with my 95-year-old grandma for my first 8 months here.
Okay.
And I wrote this on her piano to start. But I started writing it because when I moved across the country, I want to make sure this thing's in tune. I drove across the country playing solo shows, and I didn't know how to play guitar at the time at all. But I spent most of that drive listening to basically all of Bruce's discography for the first time. And it was one of those things where I got the kind of Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie bug of meeting people in all walks of life and realizing we have more in common than not, even in this politically divided time, and wanting to write about where the dividing lines really are between those in power and those who are not.
Okay.
And so this song is called We All Look the Same. Geometry has paved over the wild. There is no truth as straight as these two lanes. Stolen lands retracted into nothing. What was vibrant is now colorless and caged. All this space, no possibilities. All this time, no opportunities. We all look the same when we're dying in this bland and frigid prison that we've made. The clouds have gathered like the world is ending, but the blessed rains have yet to wash it clean. Commuted carve a scar across the continent, when the sing steps might someday set us free. Too tired to stop, too proud to ask directions, too scared to stay, too broke to pay for gas. We all look the same when we're dying, to break free from these leaden chains at last. They whispered in your ear when you were little, just do the work and you will find your place. You're older now and that promise feels so brittle. Is every atom of this burden your only faith? 'Cause you realize you're a jester, not a martyr. Now you know that you're the hooker, not the John. We all look the same when we're dying, and the suits decide the hill we're dying on. There are no true heroes, just the ones we make. There are no false idols, just the ones we break. We all look the same when we're dying, and so many of us die before we wake.
I like that a lot. That's
Thank you.
That's very good. Yeah, that's really nice. I noticed on your brief on the pod match, like one of the critics mentioned Jason Isbell, and I'm going to see him tomorrow night and Thursday night. Yeah, I see a little bit of that in there, and in a good way. You know,
that's as high praise as I can get. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that was really beautiful.
When I was a kid, I wrote off Bruce as a country artist, and again, one of the things you realize as you grow older is country music is actually amazing. It just might require digging a little bit deeper than, I don't know, Florida Georgia Line or Morgan Wallen or whoever else is out there. And so there's actually pedal steel all over this record because I love the sound of pedal steel. I absolutely love it. And actually, one of the songs I absolutely fell in love with doing dueling pianos was Springsteen by Eric Church.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite country songs ever. Just because it's so well written, right? And the storytelling in that medium is so good. And so even if I'm good, like this next record might be a little bit more along the lines of bands like Third Eye Blind or Fountains of Wayne or Teenage Fan Club, but I don't ever want to lose the storytelling instinct in what I do. That's something that's really important to me.
So I have a couple questions about that, and then I want to get back to why you decided to listen to Bruce on your road trip. But in an interview, Jason said that the more individual, or I'm going to get this wrong, but the more personal, unique story he tells, the more universal it becomes. Is that something you feel the same way?
Yes, I think I don't know if that's a straight line,
Yeah,
but
no.
yes, I definitely agree with that. I think if Born in the USA used the word we at any point, that song would not have any of the impact that it does. I think if you write we in a song where you're trying to tell people something or get them to change their mind or see things in a different way, they
Yeah,
immediately tune out.
right.
But if you write it from the ground floor, if you write it about a person, if you write it about a point of view and an experience, and about something that feels tangible, then that makes a huge difference. And yes, that what makes country music storytelling so great are the details that make you feel like you're involved in somebody else's life and somebody
Yeah,
else's story, right? And Bruce is an expert at that. And that's not just a country thing, but it is
no.
definitely a folk Americana specialty. Hip
Yeah,
hop has tons of those details too, right? Kendrick can be
yeah,
so great at that. But I do think you can get a little too niche.
yeah, sure.
So you have to be careful about what story you tell and what details you include. But I definitely agree with what Jason's saying, and God knows I should probably defer to Jason Isbell when it comes to matters like that.
No, not at all. He, why did you choose Bruce for your road trip?
I think there are some artists out there that are really tough to get into. One, because I feel like if you've heard their imitators so often before you get to them, it can be really discouraging to get into them. Like, I've never really sat down and listened to all of Led Zeppelin
Right.
or Bob Dylan or even Nirvana. Because I feel like I heard them so many times before I heard them, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And then with somebody like Bob, with somebody like Bruce, the sheer amount of the discography can also be incredibly intimidating.
Yes.
And so I forget if I'd started reading his autobiography in Boston before I left or if I read it after I'd listened to it. It would certainly have been a better choice for me to have listened to the music first. I
Yeah.
hope that's what I did.
Okay.
But I think I knew I was going to be in the car for a long time. And what a better moment to do it than when I've got all of these hours and when I'm seeing America. And what
Yeah.
he's writing about is America.
Right.
So I think it may have been a little cliche of me, but it also felt like the appropriate time.
Was there any specific songs or albums where you went from academically realizing he's a pretty good artist to, wow, he's really an exceptional artist?
I think the cliche answer is Born to Run.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel a little bit about the stuff before that, the same way that I feel about Beatles before Revolver.
Yeah.
That this is good, but he's still figuring it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, it
Hmm.
hasn't totally clicked yet.
Yeah.
Or the Who before the Who say or the before the Who sell out. Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It takes a few albums. You can hear how much of it is there and how promising it is, and there are some amazing songs on there, but it doesn't necessarily resonate with me personally. And then you get to the epics on Born to Run, and that's just a perfect record through
Yeah.
and through. And there's not a note you could change on that. And
Hmm.
even if is that the one he threw in the pool? I think that's the one he threw in
Yeah.
the pool.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that's the one that stood out. The record that surprised me the most is probably Tunnel of Love. That's got a lot of great stuff on it too. And that's just a record that was never really played in my house very much. But yeah,
Push comes to shove, I might pick Tunnel of Love as my favorite album.
interesting.
Yeah. Just I have the theory that you need to have had your heart broken 2 or 3 times or been in a really long relationship to understand Tone of Love. And then I get a 19-year-old kid that tells me it's his favorite album. Okay, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Is Secret Garden on that? Or
No. Yeah.
no? Okay, that's later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's next for you creatively? What do you want to do now?
I'm still pushing this album. I actually am in the process of mixing a live version of the entire album. We recorded at this very cool place in North Hollywood here called Kulak's Woodshed. And there's going to be a live video and audio album of the entirety of our Idling High coming out in August or September of this year. And then I know what I want the next record to sound like, and I'm taking all sorts of notes and ideas down of what the next songs are going to be, but I am more, the tank is emptier for me than it has ever been in terms of having songs ready to go and an idea of what the next record is going to be. I have a title and stuff. I want desperately to be writing and have a clear vision of that, but this is an interesting time because I think it's more uncertain than it's ever been in some ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you how we can find you and how they can buy your music.
Okay.
But is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
This is a tangent, but it will end up being relevant.
I love tangents.
Yes, I mentioned I work for a music podcast. The show I work for is called Switched On Pop. It's through Vulture Media, and they do kind of weekly analysis of what's happening in the top 40. But it's my old professor who's a musicologist at USC, and then a songwriter who teaches at Berkeley and NYU. And so they give top 40 music the grace and depth of analysis that I think a lot of critics might not otherwise give it. But they also do some fun one-off episodes. And one that we did 2 years ago, which is one of the favorite things I've ever worked on, was a comparison of 90 years of versions of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Because that song came out first in 1934. And if you are familiar with that show, I highly recommend you look up Switched On Pop and that episode of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I wrote the script, edited it. I'm not on the episode, but I did produce it. But what's really interesting about that song is that it comes out at the height of the Great Depression. And there's all these verses we don't sing anymore that are specifically about the Great Depression, all these lyrics that we leave out now. And then in the 1960s, and it also starts out as this is getting a little songwriting technical, but it starts out as a verse tagline song, right? Like a kind of the old folk idiom where just every verse ends with the same line. And then Phil Spector produces a Christmas album that the Crystals sing a version of it on, and they sing the tagline 3 times in a row, and all of a sudden it's now a verse chorus song in 1967, which is right at the time in the moment when the song is changing, and the music industry is wholeheartedly changing from verse tagline to verse chorus. And then the argument we make is that it's moving to glossier pop roots in that moment, but it's also in the middle of the civil rights movement. So it's this emblematic of the sea change that's happening in America culturally. And the person who kind of keeps the Crystals song structure, but ties it back to its folk roots and its ultimate working class origins is Bruce Springsteen when he does his live version of it that comes out, I think, in 82, right? Something like that. So we spent a lot of time talking about that version and what it means. It kind of ties a bow on it.
What's the name of the podcast?
The podcast is called Switched On Pop. And this episode came out in December 2024, I believe. Okay. But it's a blast to listen to.
Sounds good.
I say so myself. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Have you ever listened to Strong Songs with Kirk Hamilton podcast? He is a musician, and every podcast is just him breaking apart one song and why it works. And he did Born to Run. And I sent him an email saying, I thought I loved Born to Run, but after hearing you explain all the different chords and the layers and what they're doing, I love it even more. So you might like that. That's awesome.
I love stuff like that. That's great to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is great. Okay. In the spirit of you being a teacher, Jay Armstrong was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He is now retired. But when he was teaching, he would give his honors English class the lyrics to Thunder Road. And they would treat it as if it was a poem. And they would read it, discuss it, talk about the themes, talk about the imagery, what this being. And then at the end of the class, he would ask his students, does Mary get in the car at the end of the song? So Jake, that is your question. Does Mary get in this car at the end of Thunder Road? And you said you had a Thunder Road story for me.
I think I kind of told it with the Born to Run tie-in with the dueling pianos earlier. I did say that. But yes, I'm convinced she does. I think in the same way that you could ask the same question about Dancing in the Dark, arguably, and whether or not she actually gets up to dance with him.
Yeah.
And to me, Clarence Clemons answers that question pretty clearly.
Nice.
That's the way I think of it. That's the answer to the, and because there are moments where Clarence Clemons' sax, like you think at the end of Jungle Land, or the middle part of Jungle Land, where his melody is a little bit more haunting and less clear and less joyous, right? To me, that is clearly the sound of victory and them driving off into the sunset together. Now, the music teacher in me would say, but it is halftime feel. And if they cut to halftime feel, doesn't sound like the car's driving. It feels like it should be full time if they're still driving off. But I don't think that would feel as victorious at the end musically, unless that question has been answered.
So someone very early in the podcast said it depends.
Oh, okay.
He said if it's the full E Street Band doing it, yes, she gets in the car. If it's him solo, no, she doesn't get in the car.
That's a
For that very reason, right? Because of that triumphant saxophone. And he said when it's Bruce being it alone, she chooses not to. So that's great.
I don't know if you're familiar with the band Fountains of Wayne.
Yes.
Okay. Most people are familiar with them for Stacy's Mom, but they wrote a lot of really brilliant songs. And on that same album of Stacy's Mom, they have a song called All Kinds of Time.
Yeah.
And that's a ballad about a high school quarterback. It's 4.5 minutes long, and the entire song takes place in the space of the quarterback dropping back to pass and throwing the ball. Wow. It's amazing. I could do an entire podcast or essay about this and how it exemplifies the flow state psychology that athletes have while they're on the field and seeing things before they happen and all of that. And there's a similar thing at the end of that song where I'm convinced the ending is clearly the band simulating the applause of the crowd going wild as the receiver catches the ball in the end zone, though that's never said explicitly.
Yeah.
But that's just great songwriting, right? When on the one hand, you can have such a clear answer to the question, even if it's not explicit. And two people can have such perfectly well-reasoned, clear answers to the same question. That's the goal of art.
I realize you have a lot of irons in the fire, but you have an open invitation to come and do that episode here.
Oh, that's amazing.
I would listen to the song, study it, and absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. Where's obviously the website, right? JakeCassman.com. Where else is the best way to go if someone wants to reach you and get your music?
For those listening out there, that's spelled C-Ass-Man. That's how you can find me on all. Now you'll never forget my last name.
Yes.
I'm Jake Cassman Music on all social platforms. And if you happen to be in Southern California and Los Angeles area on May 31st, I don't know when this is going to drop, but on May 31st, I'm playing the LA County Fair in Pomona, and I'm currently giving away tickets for that day on May 31st. I can give away up to 50 tickets to people who want to come to the fair and come see me that evening at 6 p.m. So if you go to jakecassman.com, there's a place for you to sign up, and we'll get you tickets. And I'd love for you to come up to me at the fair and say, I heard you on Set Lusting Bruce, and we can connect that way. That would be amazing.
I will make sure I get this out before then.
Okay,
I absolutely will do. I'd love that. Yes. And I'm gonna order the CD. I will debate whether I want digital or hard copy.
I should say, this is the first record I just have vinyl available.
Okay.
But I will happily send you vinyl.
Okay.
Because you've been very generous. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very sweet. All right, there we go.
As well just be coasters anyway.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you, Jake. This was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun.
I had a blast, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Listeners, go to the website, check it out, check out his music. Hey, if you're in California, head to the fair. For now, everyone be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening, for being part of this journey. Your support means everything. If you've got thoughts, feedback, or just want to say hi, drop me a line at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. The podcast has its own Facebook page, Set Listing Bruce, and Set Listing Bruce on Twitter, aka X. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter and would love for you to follow me. If you enjoyed the episode, head to your favorite podcast player and leave the podcast a review. Hopefully a 5-star one. It helps others discover the show and keeps the boss's stories flowing. Tell another Bruce Springsteen fan about the podcast. Share it on your social media. The best way for people to learn about Set Listing Bruce and the stories we're capturing is through word of mouth, from one fan to another. For now, keep hope alive, and I'll see you further on down the road.